So coming up this weekend is going to be the final UFC event of the year, taking place in Tampa, Florida, headlined by Colby, Covington and Joaquin Buckley. I will be honest with you guys, I am very tired at the time of me recording this video. It is only Monday, but it was a long day at work, man. It's just so hot, and as you guys know, I am working at the moment in the roofing industry, so I'm outside and it is just pretty intense at the moment. So yeah, I'm in the real world right now, really. I'm no longer a university student, getting my 9 hours of sleep a day, kind of living off my own sort of schedule. None of that at the moment. But that's all good, man. I'm gonna try and make this one just a bit of a quicker one because I do start work like pretty early in the morning, and I would like to get some good sleep because I didn't have the best sleep last night. But of course, I was looking into UFC Fight Night Covington versus Buckley. Now, We Want Picks is, of course, doing very well. I think over the last few events, they have had some really good results, just overall have been kind of killing it. And if you did want to sign up, now would be a pretty good time just for the final card, but then after that, there is going to be no events, of course. But if you do sign up using my code ARTEM, you do get 10% off, and you do very much help my channel quite significantly. And over the summer, also the summer for me, the winter for a lot of people in the US, and over the new year, of course, and Christmas, there is going to be no UFC, but I'm going to try my best to stay on top of everything. I want to make some prospect videos. I want to make some potential Road to UFC Contender Series videos. Just let me know what you guys want to see. I intend to make another video on the game WMMA 5, which is my most popular video on my channel, and I've been meaning to make an updated video for about 18 months now. But yeah, I'll get around to all of those sorts of things. Let me know, of course, just kind of everything, how it's all going with the face cam. I know the lighting's weird, but it's just so hot right now. I need to have the window open and the curtains open. Let's now get into the first one. Hopefully that intro was not too long. Piera Rodriguez now does fight against Josefine Knutsson. I think that Josefine Knutsson does have all of the skills to go really far in the UFC, and just in general, she is a very, very talented fighter. She's a world champion in kickboxing. You see it when she does fight. She is extremely talented. She is a level above the opponents that she does fight on the feet, but she makes just so many, like, not even mistakes, she just makes so many decisions in fights that just lead to her being like a really boring fighter to watch, because she'll be piecing up Manik Man on the feet, absolutely smoking her on the feet, and Manik Man is about to get finished, and then she'll clinch Manik Man. Like, what are you doing? So she makes a lot of mistakes, I feel like, in the aspect which she is preventing herself from being entertaining, from being getting a lot of finishes, and she does wrestle a bit as well. She takes on Piera Rodriguez. Piera Rodriguez, of course, was once a really hyped up prospect, has lost 2 in a row, but one of them was to Gillian Robertson, who is doing a lot of things now in this division after coming down from flyweight, and then she did lose to Ariane Canelossi in a DQ, but Canelossi is what it is. But Piera Rodriguez, former Contender Series fighter, she is a boxer wrestler. She does actually get quite a pretty decent amount of takedowns in her fights, but I think that ultimately Knutsson's striking is just going to be way too good, and her takedown defense will probably be tested again, kind of like it was a little bit against Pilastri, but I think ultimately Knutsson should be the better fighter overall and should win a decision. Now we have Davey Grant fighting against Ramon Taveras. I'm actually not the biggest fan of Ramon Taveras, I'll be honest with you guys, just because I don't really know if he's got much outside of the striking, and we haven't really seen him tested in the wrestling and the grappling department so far, I feel, in his career. Against Cortavius Romeus, he knocked him out in 29 seconds. He's a grappler. Soho City, despite being the significantly better wrestler and grappler, refused to win that fight by shooting for takedowns, so he just gave Ramon Taveras a free win, and then he was KO'd somewhat controversially. Now, apparently, in his fight against Ryan Mondala, which I have struggled to find, so if you guys can find it, please let me know, Mondala was able to take him down a few times, but that was in 2021, and against Edwin Massey, you're going to struggle to find tape on this one, but he does just get caught with a head kick and knocked out in that way. That's how he's lost. He takes on Davey Grant. Davey Grant's a striker, just a very tricky kickboxer overall. He kind of can do everything. On the feet, he's got, I would say, the much better kicks than what Ramon Taveras does bring, because Ramon Taveras is a boxer, one thing about Davey Grant is that he is getting up there in age, but he's not only just getting up there in age, he is actually giving a lot of fighters some very tough tests. He gave Adrian Yanez at that point one of the toughest tests of his career. He gave Daniel Marcos the toughest test, in my opinion, of his career so far. And now he's going to take on a guy in Ramon Taveras, who is also a striker, somewhat similar to Adrian Yanez, I would actually argue as well. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how he's able to defeat this kind of opponent, or if he can defeat this kind of opponent. But he's nearly 39 years old. I actually thought that he beat Daniel Marcos, and I picked him to beat Daniel Marcos. I think. I might not have actually. I can't remember. But the thing about Ramon Taveras is, I feel like out of the two, he is so much more dangerous than Davey Grant. He is the guy that's probably going to get a finish if there's going to be a finish. He does have big time KO power. He does like to close the distance and throw down in the pocket with his boxing. But I like Davey Grant, man. I just kind of like the fact that I feel like he's got a little bit more of a well-rounded skill set. Although Taveras has kind of showcased that he can make a lot of although he can. I don't know where I was going there, but Taveras as well, another thing, which is why I got sidetracked. He's made a pretty big, life change. I think he's moved out of his home city, where I believe he was attacked, if you guys don't remember, or at least at his mom's house or something. It was a pretty insane situation. But yeah, I like Davey Grant in this fight, man. I don't know, he's nearly 39 years old, but we've seen him give so many fighters problems already that are similar stylistic matchups, is kind of where I was trying to get to there. Miranda Maverick now fights against Jamey-Lyn Horth. I do like Miranda Maverick to win this one here. Now, Jamey-Lyn Horth is a pretty big fighter for this weight class, but aside from that, I don't know if she's going to have much more on Maverick necessarily. Miranda Maverick at 5'3" is kind of on the smaller end of the weight class, but not necessarily, because she does still kind of have a pretty decent sized frame just from wrestling all her life, I would probably say that is from. And she does have decent wrestling. Now, her wrestling isn't the best in the division, but it is pretty good. And I think that the wrestling is going to be good enough to take down Jamey-Lyn Horth here. Jamey-Lyn Horth, of course, did make her debut in the UFC upper weight class on short notice against Hayley Cowan. Hayley Cowan going through a lot right now. If you know, you know. And then she did lose to Veronica Hardy and beat Ivana Petrovic in a fight which was pretty close. I think in this matchup, though, if Petrovic can get you down, Maverick can get you down, and that's kind of what Maverick's going to want to do. She's going to want to get the fight down to the ground. She's going to want to get the top control. This is a step down in competition for Maverick, especially when you consider a lot of people think that she beat Macy Barber a couple of years ago, and now she kind of is fighting someone that only has a couple of fights in the UFC. I think that this is a good fight for Maverick. I think that after this, she's going to get another ranked opponent for sure. So give me Miranda Maverick to win this matchup, probably by decision. Miles Johns now fights against Felipe Lima. Last I checked, we didn't have odds for the fight. I'm going to guess Lima's going to be the favorite, or I think he actually is the favorite, because I think he's minus 135. I could be wrong about that. He might be minus 200, honestly. But Felipe Lima, I like him a lot, man, and I think that although this is actually going to be a very tough matchup for him, I actually think it's also a pretty good matchup for him. Miles Johns is one of those fighters that has changed his style completely. This is a guy that was coming into the UFC, and he was shooting for takedowns over and over and over and over again. I'm not exactly sure which fight it was, but I believe out of one of these two fights, he attempted more than 10 takedowns in the 15-minute fight, which is just insane. And then after that, he's been fighting against Cody Gibson. I think he attempted a couple takedowns there. He attempted 3 takedowns against Douglas Silva de Andrade, and he won that fight. So he's really kind of just started to focus in the striking. But on the feet, he's not the most technical striker in the world, but he does have pretty good boxing. He does have a very strong overhand, which he isn't afraid to throw whatsoever. But he's taken on Lima, who had arguably one of the best debuts of the year, considering the fact that it was on very short notice. He was signed from Octagon on, I believe, five days notice or something like that. He's the Octagon champion. And if you guys don't know, Octagon is a massive promotion. They are selling out stadiums in Europe. I think they're not very big outside of Europe, but in Europe, they are huge. They did a huge event where they had over 50,000 people in attendance in Germany, which is nuts. And actually, when they gave the UFC Felipe Lima, or at least released Felipe Lima from his contract, they actually said something along the lines of, we're not going to do this again. So Octagon is kind of really going like exclusive contract mode, like the PFL and Bellator are. But anyway, that was a really side rant. I'm sure at least someone was interested in what Octagon did with Lima, but he won the title against Jonas Magard in a very good grappling affair where he looked very good in the grappling. And Magard, honestly, he might be a guy in his own right to find some success. I knew that he did fight somewhat recently, and he did beat Josh Hill, and now he's got a pretty tough test against the Brazilian, but I'm getting so sidetracked right now. Felipe Lima, I think he only got one takedown against Nahimov, but he looked good on the feet. He got the back of Nahimov, I believe it was standing, and he turns it into the submission. He's a really good grappler, really dynamic striker, really dynamic grappler. I'm going to pick Lima. I'm actually picking Lima to win by finish. He could get the KO, but I think he's going to get the sub most likely. This is a guy to keep your eye out for. I picked him to beat Nahimov as well. I was really impressed by the Jonas Magard fight. I do this all the time. I say I'm going to make a quick picks video, and then it just ends up being like a quick picks video with me rambling for half the time, so I do apologize. But anyway, Sean Woodson now fights against Fernando Padilla. Could be a hilarious fight, as in these guys both have pretty funny builds at 145 pounds. You know, Padilla's 6'1" at this weight class, Woodson's 6'2" at this weight class, which is just completely insane when you really think about it. But Woodson's just a really tall guy with really long arms and really long legs. You know what I mean? Like with very thin, kind of like toothpick legs, that he just kind of like utilizes his range quite well. He is a former boxer. He boxed at heavyweight. If you guys didn't know, the photos of that time is pretty nuts, and you honestly wouldn't believe that it was actually him unless like he still had the tattoos, and he does. So it's pretty nuts. But yeah, he does box from range very, very well. In the past, he could get hurt. Like he had that hilarious matchup against Luis Saldana, who I don't think has actually fought since. Then after that, he's had a couple of good matchups since then. Coming off a win over Alex Caceres. Alex Caceres did give him a pretty decent test, but Woodson did ultimately win the fight. And I think I actually did pick Caceres to win that one because I do like Caceres striking just overall a lot. He takes on Padilla. Padilla's interesting, coming on a full camp after being signed to the promotion for a long time, and I think injuries actually kept him away. Knocked out Julian Erosa. I was like, this guy's going to be the real deal. He was just smoking Erosa on the feet the whole time. And then he lost to old mate, whose name I've forgotten, Kyle Nelson. Kyle Nelson went on a win streak after this. I think this was during his win streak, and Kyle Nelson really turned his career around, so not too much to lose there. And then he subbed Pejuelo in like 30 seconds, but Luis Pejuelo, it's just not that good. He's just not that good. I think Sean Woodson wins. I think Sean Woodson's going to be the better boxer here. He can grapple. We've seen that even against Saldana. We've seen that against other people as well. He can throw up submissions up off his back. I think that in this matchup against Padilla, he should be pretty safe on the ground. I think Padilla's going to want the fight down on the ground. But Woodson, I mean, I was going to say he actually is a sniper with his jab. His nickname's the Sniper. He does actually have pretty good striking accuracy, does maintain range quite well, and I think he is going to land on Padilla, whose striking defense does leave just a little bit to be desired. It's not really bad, but it does leave a little bit to be desired, in my opinion. Drakkar Klose now fights against Joel Alvarez. Interesting matchup, considering Joel Alvarez is minus 340. I personally wouldn't be throwing half the bankroll on Joel Alvarez this weekend, even though I actually do think that he does win, and he probably will be one of my more confident picks on the card, so I do understand how hypocritical that does sound, but Drakkar Klose isn't a bum. You know, this guy's actually pretty good. At one point, he was actually a pretty top prospect. He got hurt. I think he got knocked out by old mate Manel, and then since then, he took a lot of time off. He had that situation with Jeremy Stephens, where, like, Jeremy Stephens shoved him at the weigh-in, and I think it caused all sorts of problems with his neck and his back. Like, it was pretty major sort of stuff that I think a lot of people gloss over and have forgotten about, but he come back. I mean, what he did to Brandon Jenkins was probably illegal, and then since then did go on a pretty good win streak over pretty decent opponents as well. Drakkar Klose is like a boxer wrestler. He was a lot more of a wrestler, but now he started to box a bit more, and just overall he does have a lot of like good skill sets. He takes on Alvarez. Alvarez is 6'3", 77 inches for the weight class. Honestly, might be the biggest lightweight in the division right now, unless Tom Nolan has taken that, because it probably was Sam Patterson. But I think it might be actually Joel Alvarez. This guy might be the biggest guy in the weight class. He's a grappler. He wants to fight on the ground. He's happy to actually be on the ground and be in bottom position just because he can have so much of a submission threat. He was fighting against Mark Diakase and he subbed him in the second round. And then against Alves Brenner, I think I picked Alves Brenner to win that fight. I would be surprised if I didn't, to be honest. And that fight was pretty fun, but Alvarez ended up knocking him out. And then that fight actually showed pretty good takedown defense, which is something that I think he lacked kind of significantly. Now, it didn't actually matter because he was just subbing people off of his back and he was actually missing weight a lot as well. I did forget to mention that. So he was pretty kind of happy just kind of, throwing up subs off his back. But I think against Drakkar Klose, Drakkar Klose is good ground and pound. You probably don't want to be doing that too much. But I think it's an Alvarez fight. Alvarez, his striking looked good against Brenner as well. I thought he does maintain range a lot better than he used to. Now, he still can be a little bit of just like a punching bag. It's like he doesn't move his head that much, but it doesn't really... He's got the tall man's defense, is what I'm trying to say. But I think Alvarez does win this one. I think he does win this one by submission as well against Drakkar Klose. Now, Michael Johnson fights against Otman Azaitar. I think Michael Johnson wins. I will be honest with you guys, I was actually half expecting him to be an underdog until I checked the odds earlier today, and I think Michael Johnson was like nearly minus 250. And... like it's Otman Azaitar, and he just ain't the same guy he was, because there was kind of the whole Potato Man situation that kind of went on. So I will call him the Potato Man for the rest of this breakdown if that's all good. But the Potato Man come into the UFC and he was knocking people out silly. He was just absolutely going nuts. He knocked out Teemu Pekkanen, who, do you guys remember him? I mean, I've watched this sport a lot and I don't remember him, but I do remember Kama Worthy because... like a right of way in the UFC was to knock out poor Kama Worthy. And I think Trevor Peek actually knocked out Kama Worthy. Yes, he did. That was his fight before the Contender Series. But anyway, Kama Worthy has no chin, but it didn't matter. He looked pretty good doing it. He was knocking people out. Then they had the big Potato Man situation, during the COVID-19 situation. But there were some potatoes that someone was literally like being Spider-Man in the hotel, climbing up the walls with a bag of potatoes is what we've been told was in it. But considering he didn't fight for like 2 years, I mean, I know he was like violated the protocols at the time. There probably wasn't potatoes in that bag, let's be honest. But Michael Johnson, he still kind of has it. Like, he has had a couple of pretty close fights recently. He's a good boxer. He can wrestle. We just beat Darius Flowers as well, which was a pretty fun fight overall, I thought. But yeah, I think against Azaitar, the secret to beating him is just to take him down. I believe he was knocked down by Prado, but once Prado got on top of him, Azaitar had absolutely nothing. And if Johnson just has an ounce of a game plan, it's going to be to take down Azaitar. I think on paper, Azaitar's takedown defense is 100%, but it's just because he either gets knocked out in the first round, or he gets the knockout in the first round. I think this fight probably goes a bit longer, and honestly, I think Johnson just takes him down. I think we see Johnson go out there, take down Azaitar, and just eventually wear on him and get a late finish. Probably by TKO, honestly. Then move up. The main card, we have Navajo Stirling fighting against Tuko Tokos. A fight I'm very, very much excited for. I am a big fan of Navajo Stirling. Have been since he even got the Contender Series call, which was pretty fun. In fact, actually, before he even fought Sam K, because actually I was like in his Twitch chat. If you guys don't know, Navajo Stirling, I think it's Rainbow Six Siege that he plays all the time on Twitch. So if you want to follow him on Twitch and you want to watch him play some Six Siege, do that. And then he had a performance against Philippe Latu, which, I'll be honest, I think that it actually did kind of expose some problems that we may see Navajo Stirling run into if he does fight like a better level of competition in the UFC, because although Philippe Latu was a guy that claimed to be 6'2" and clearly wasn't, he was just kind of like a short guy that has power in his hands. And he did land a pretty decent amount of strikes on Navajo Stirling's chin. So maybe what we could worry about a little bit in the future for Navajo is just kind of the striking defense. But he does have very good kickboxing overall. He, I believe, was a kickboxing champion for not WAKO, but like a smaller sort of promotion. So he has been a world champion in kickboxing before. The promotion or whatever it was under, I have forgotten about. But he's got a high level kickboxing background. He's won the King of the Ring tournament at least once. That's the tournament which Carlos Ulberg has won multiple times, and of course that's pretty good to kind of look at. He's a good striker. Overall, he's 6'4", pretty tall for the weight class, maintains range quite well, just has the classic C kickboxing striking style. He's fighting a wrestler here in Tuco Tokos. And Tuco Tokos kind of famously got knocked out by Jamey-Lyn as a plus 600, like a minus 800 favorite. Jamey-Lyn was a massive underdog in that fight, and like in hindsight, Jamey-Lyn might be the real deal. I mean, Navajo Stirling versus Jamey-Lyn could be like the most insane fight of all time if they did it. And then since then, he did kind of grind his way through on the regional scene. He didn't really fight like anybody. But, you know, he got it done, coming on short notice against old mate Umasai. Didn't really show a good performance for himself, I will be honest. But aside from that, what Tuco Tokos does bring to the table is not a lot of power on the hands, but he does bring a pretty aggressive wrestling style, and he's going to want to get takedowns against Navajo Stirling. So we're about to see Navajo Stirling's takedown defense and grappling tested a lot. Now, Navajo Stirling's takedown defense, it is a little bit of an unknown at this point. Now, apparently, he's won a bunch of jiu-jitsu tournaments over here in New Zealand, but take with that what you will. I mean, you know, like, I don't know what level that was, like, if that was, like, at the black belt level, or the purple belt, or the blue belt level, but nonetheless, we know that Navajo Stirling can grapple. One thing as well that city kickboxing does do so well is defensive grappling. Like Kaikara France, I think that as a striker, he probably is one of the best defensive grapplers in the promotion. Dan Hooker has like pretty good takedown defense, you know, not notoriously good takedown defense, but pretty good. Israel Adesanya, I would say, has notoriously good takedown defense unless he's fighting against Dricus du Plessis, but you guys know what I mean. The city kickboxing guys, they've got good takedown defense. I think that Stirling does win this fight. Pretty long breakdown for a minus 500 favorite, but I do like Navajo quite a lot, and I am honestly a pretty big fan of him, but I do think that this is a good matchup for him. Tuco Tokos isn't really the best striker, and I think that Navajo can probably get the knockout in this fight. Daniel Marcos now fights against Adrian Yanez. I have tried to fade Daniel Marcos so many times. So many times. In fact, I did openly pick Davey Grant to beat him. I still think that Davey Grant is a very... I think Davey Grant won the fight. As I said earlier in the video, I think Davey Grant did win the fight. And then I actually picked John Castaneda to beat him as well. Bad pick. Really bad pick. Daniel Marcos is making some really big improvements. I don't know if he still trains under head coach Charles Rosa, but whatever's happening, he is making very good improvements. And I couldn't actually believe how much better Marcos looked in that fight than he did against Davey Grant. Now, I do know he had the no contest in between with Archie Lang, but you know, it's Archie Lang. I love Archie Lang, I do, but it's not like a top 15 level guy like you could maybe argue Adrian Yanez is. I was so impressed with how fast Marcos was, and he was making so many reads on John Castaneda. He could tell what was coming as it was coming at him. And as I said, I have been looking to fade Daniel Marcos since this guy got into the UFC, and I just don't know if this is going to be the fight to do it. Adrian Yanez come into the promotion with a lot of hype behind him. Well, he didn't come in with a lot of hype, but he generated a lot of hype, I should say. Got a couple massive KOs. I mean, he knocked out the great Randy Costa. He knocked out the great Tony Kelly, which is kind of hilarious when you really think about like the build up to that fight and stuff. But one thing I do say about this run that he went on is, aside from the win over Davey Grant, I don't think that the level of competition that he beat was all that high level. Like, I don't think Gustavo Lopez is around anymore. Unless he just isn't. He's just not around anymore. In fact, he fought my goat Jonas Magard, but you know, Randy Costa's not around anymore. I think Randy Costa got knocked out on the regional scene recently. Am I like not mistaken in saying that? No, I know. I'm just yapping at this point. But Tony Kelly ain't in the promotion no more. One thing that you can't deny about him though is that he just does have really good boxing. But Rob Font knocked him out, and in that fight, just Yanez struggled with the pressure of Font early, and then Martinez was just leg kicking him the whole fight, and he didn't have a response to it. The thing that Yanez has always struggled with is someone that's going to come out against him and be pressure forward and be aggressive against him. Randy Costa, in that first round, found so much success against Adrian Yanez because Costa is an aggressive striker early. He is a pressure forward guy early. And he did look really good in the first round against Yanez, and then of course he knocked him out. Davey Grant, sort of the same thing. Rob Font and Jonathan Martinez, the same thing. He knocked out Vinicius Salvador, but that's just like, he was minus 1200 in that fight, if I'm not mistaken. He should have been minus 1200 in that fight in hindsight. But Daniel Marcos, I think, actually has the skill set to implement their game plan. I think Daniel Marcos can come out there with a pretty high volume round one, a pretty pressure forward round one, and he can implement the leg kicks, which gave Yanez so many problems against Jonathan Martinez because he just didn't defend them. So I think this is it's not a great matchup for Marcos, but it's a winnable fight for Marcos. Now, I actually think that Yanez is probably going to be, like, if not the most popular most popular underdog on the card, he might be the most popular underdog on the card. But I'm just going to say it, as someone that has tried to fade Daniel Marcos so many times, I can recognize that he's made rapid improvements, and I can also recognize again that I think that he has the skill set to go out there and beat Adrian Yanez. I think he can put the pressure on him round one. I think he can land the leg kicks, and I think he can avoid the power for the first couple of rounds, which is where Yanez is going to be the most dangerous. So Yanez, very good boxer, very likable guy, actually, I should say. So I do feel bad kind of talking him down just a little bit with the level of competition and stuff like that. But you can't deny the skill set, you can't deny the boxing, but I think just overall, Marcos has the more well-rounded striking skill set, and I think that he can go out there and win a decision over Yanez. And I think what's going to have to happen if Marcos is going to have to win, I think Marcos needs to win that first round. Like, he needs the first round, and I think from there he might be able to continue with the fight. Dustin Jacoby fights now against Vitor Petrino. Hilarious matchmaking because Jacoby just lost to Reyes, and Reyes just lost to Anthony Smith, who beat Vitor Petrino. Vitor Petrino, before that Smith fight, was a prospect, man, and he was coming in to the Contender Series and the UFC as a pure striker. This guy was just knocking people out silly in the first round, knocked out Rodolfo Bellato in the first round, but actually, like, you know, in hindsight, we kind of saw this coming because he was attempting takedowns on Bellato. And then he goes out there against my GOAT, Anton Turkalj, a fighter who lost many fights in the UFC that I picked him to win as well, I should say. I think I'm 1-3 on Turkalj predictions. That's how many times I picked Turkalj to win a fight in the promotion, including this one. Anyways, we saw Petrino just start to wrestle a lot more, just out of nowhere, almost. And I don't really know why he did it. Now, it looked really good until he ran into Smith, who just has a decent defensive grappling, and good defensive grappling, but a decent guillotine choke. He got caught in it. It is what it is. In fact, he just gave Smith the free sub. That's kind of how Smith wins. You either have to give him a free win, or you just knock him out, like Reyes did. But Petrino takes in Jacoby. Jacoby's going to be the better technical striker here. I don't think it's really going to be too close. But Petrino is going to be the more dangerous guy. He's got a lot of power in the hands. He closes the distance and throws his hooks. He's a massive guy, just in general. And for the weight class, he's pretty big as well. But I think it's just going to come down to the fact that Petrino is going to be a threat on the feet, but also he's going to want to wrestle. And I think against Dustin Jacoby, he's not going to run into the same sort of resistance on the ground as he would have against Anthony Smith. And although Tyson Pedro looked really bad in that fight, you could even argue that Pedro's defensive grappling is a bit more dangerous than Dustin Jacoby. So I think that in this matchup, it's a Petrino fight. I don't know if he's going to strike with Jacoby. I kind of hope he doesn't. But I think he's going to wrestle, and I think it's probably just going to lead to either Petrino decision or a knockout, depending on the game plan that Petrino decides to use. Manel now fights against Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva kind of being somewhat active, but inactive at the same time. You know, he knocked out JP Buys, which is really sad at the time because this is the period of time which JP Buys revealed to the world that Cheyenne Buys is now with the Roman Dolidze, and that he got knocked out. It was really sad. Just another moment in silence for JP Buys, man. I really hope that man is doing better now. But then he knocked out Victor Rodriguez, who I'm pretty confident is not in the promotion no more. Comes out of nowhere, and he finishes Tyson Nam, the first man to submit Tyson Nam, or the second man to submit Tyson Nam, I want to say. And then he knocks out Cody Durden, which is a pretty good win, obviously. But now he goes in there against Manel Kape. If you guys don't know, Bruno Silva is a long-time training partner of Henry Cejudo, and they fight in a kind of similar way. You know, they don't really... They kind of look a little bit similar, don't they? But they don't really fight in the same way. Bruno Silva's a lot more aggressive. He kind of just comes forward a lot and he throws a lot of hooks and he likes to land like a lot with a lot of power because he's only 5'4". He's a pretty small guy at 125, but he makes up for it with a pretty big frame. And he just closes the distance, man. He doesn't really have the longest arms, and he's going to go in there and he's going to try and bomb away on the feet and try and get takedowns and get his offensive grappling going when he's on the ground as well. For Manel Kape, we know what Manel Kape is going to do. He's going to try and strike from range for the most part. And I think that against Bruno Silva, he is just going to be the better striker. I think he's just going to be the better technical striker here. And his takedown defense has held up quite a lot. I mean, he did just lose to Mikhaev, which is tragic because they just released Mikhaev. And Mikhaev is now fighting for Brave, and they need a fresh matchup for Alejandro Pantoja. They tried to do it with Kaya Sakura, and now what do? They could have done Mikhaev. I don't even know what they do with Pantoja, man. Honestly, Kape might just fight Pantoja if he beats Bruno Silva. I don't even know, man. But nonetheless, I mean, he had that fight against Felipe dos Santos. I was in the stadium, in the arena, watching it live, cheering for Felipe dos Santos because I love that man. But I think that Kape is the better technical striker here. I think he does beat Bruno Silva. I think he does defend the takedowns off Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva's not as aggressive in the wrestling, or in my opinion, as good at the wrestling as Mikhaev is. And although he's more dangerous on the feet than Mikhaev, I think that Kape should be able to just kind of be the better striker and win the fight in that way. So that's interesting. And now we have Cub Swanson fighting against Billy Quarantillo. I actually kind of don't mind Cub Swanson in this matchup. The problem that I do have with Cub Swanson, though, is in his last two fights, win and loss, close loss to Andre Fili, close win to Hakeem Dawodu, he's landed the least strikes out of the two. So he's a guy that at this point in his career, he's making the fights close. He landed less strikes than Hakeem Dawodu, but he did win the fight because he did the more damage. But then against Andre Fili, he landed... Oh, wait, did he land more strikes than Fili? Oh, because Andre Fili, I believe, shot 11 takedowns on him, and he defended 9 of them. Oh, no, I'm just yapping, guys. I don't even know, man. Cub Swanson, though, he's making fights close at this point in his career. Overall, he is a very well-rounded fighter. I would actually say, though, that mostly he is a striker, but he can be pretty low volume at this point in his career, as I did just say. Moving on to Billy Quarantillo. Billy Quarantillo was all the hype at one point because he just does not have boring fights. He's always in fun fights. He was given a pretty major step up in competition after a pretty big win over Alexander Hernandez against Edson Barboza. And he did get knocked out pretty quickly, which is a pretty big shame for Billy Quarantillo. But before that, he had a pretty great fight against Shane Burgos, who was just kind of always in good fights again. And just overall, Billy Quarantillo, pretty fun fighter, but very much, I feel like, a bit more of a grappler than what Cub Swanson is. And I think in this matchup, if anyone's going to be throwing more volume, I honestly think it is going to be Billy Quarantillo. He's a very aggressive guy, but I think if anyone is going to also be trying to get the takedowns, I also think it would be Billy Quarantillo. But I think at this point, you are going to struggle to get takedowns on Cub Swanson. Another thing as well about this fight, the winner should fight Doo Ho Choi. It would be a rematch for Cub Swanson. It would be a fun fight for both. I mean, it would be great. But anyway, yeah, I think that Billy Quarantillo does win this fight. This fight is the co-main event for a reason. I know it wasn't meant to be Amanda Ribas's fight, but that fell out. Well, it didn't fall out. It got rescheduled. It's the main event, I believe, now of an Apex card. But Billy Q versus Cub Swanson. Cub Swanson, of course, been in the game for a long, long time. And as for Billy Q, you know, he's just always fun. He's always going to bring it, and I think that's what's going to happen. I think Billy Q's going to go out there, throw more volume, land more volume. That fight was a mess of a breakdown. I do apologize, but I think that he's just going to kind of do more. He's going to do more volume, and he's going to be aggressive in the grappling as well. Now, Colby Covington has stepped up on short notice against Joaquin Buckley, and I feel like a year ago, if you told me that Colby Covington in the big 2024 stepped up on short notice to fight somebody, I just wouldn't believe you. Colby Covington just kind of never really seemed to be that guy that was willing to step up and save a card and step up and do something to save a card or something like that. But I feel like maybe just at this point in his career, he's just realized that he's been getting these opportunities that he hasn't really earned all that much. So now he probably feels like if he does the company a favor against Buckley, maybe he gets the Buckley fight. But honestly, I think if he beats Buckley or even loses to Buckley, if Jorge Masvidal really has come back to the UFC, which I still have my doubts about whether or not that's true, they might do the rematch. I don't know. But at the end of the day, you look at Colby Covington, and the thing about him is his legacy isn't really based on his wins. It's just based on the fact that he's made fights close with Kamaru Usman. And I know that sounds disrespectful to say, but it kind of is true. He has actually had a lot of success prior to getting the title shots. You know, against Rodney Lawler, he got the big finish. The big decision win with a lot of takedowns. Beat RDA. Beat Damian Maia in Brazil as well. That was kind of pretty big. And just overall has been giving a lot of problems to Usman. He gave Usman problems in the boxing and in the wrestling as well. But he come out there against Leon Edwards and he just looked really bad. In fact, he looked so bad against Edwards, people were memeing him. And honestly, it's a shame on Edwards for not getting the finish. It really is. But he comes out here against Joaquin Buckley, against a guy that I think is just going to be a lot more dangerous than him. And also a guy that I think is so much younger, is riding so much momentum right now, just with so many different, reasons. Like social media momentum, fight momentum. He just knocked out Wonderboy. The way that he did knock out Wonderboy, though, was he did wear him down a little bit with the takedown attempts, and then he just knocked him out. You don't see people knock out Stephen Thompson, and Joaquin Buckley did it. And then, of course, he beat Nursultan Ruzaboyev, which was just an odd fight, let's be honest, it really was. And then he knocked out my GOAT, unfortunately, Luque. But in this matchup, man, if the same Colby Covington shows up against Leon Edwards, and if anything, it might be a worse version because Colby's on short notice now, and he's also getting older too, and the short notice is just not really going to help Colby that much because Colby's greatest weapon has always really been his cardio. You can't really weaponize cardio when you've got to make a weight cut on short notice. I know that he's not a big guy for the weight class either, and that's another one as well. Colby's a small guy at 170 pounds. Buckley's a former middleweight. Now, he has made the 170 frame very well. This guy's in insane shape. But he's a former middleweight as well. He's brought that power down with him as well. He's getting big time KOs at 170. I just think that overall, it's a good matchup for Buckley. I think that Buckley can defend the takedowns of Covington. The way that Covington wins this fight, and I can see Covington doing it, that's the thing, is if he just takes down Joaquin Buckley early and really makes Joaquin Buckley work for the first 2 rounds with his grinding style. And if that cardio is as good as we've seen it before, then he is probably the guy that I'll be willing to put my money on to last the 5 rounds rather than Buckley. But the pick that I have gone with is a Buckley KO, so we might not see that happen. I actually do think that eventually Joaquin Buckley is going to land on Covington. And if anything, I think Buckley comes out into this fight against Covington really aggressive, man. I think you might just give Covington no respect. But honestly, kind of a bit of respect for Covington. I'm not the biggest Covington fan, as you may have told by this breakdown, but I mean, I'm surprised. I am really surprised that of all the fighters to take a short notice matchup, it's Colby Covington. The winner of this fight, I don't really know where they go, but if it is Colby Covington, they might give Colby Covington the Jorge Masvidal fight if Jorge Masvidal is actually back. I don't know if he is, but that could be cool. Let me know what you think in the comments below. 37 minutes, I wanted it to be a quick video. It's not, it just never is with me, but it is what it is. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys in the next one.